No, I'm not a professional harmonica player. But I was a facilitator once, and one of my mentors said that it's a great way to get people's attention. So in a non triggering way. So hi. Um, didn't expect so many emotions, but a lot of them are coming up. So today is December 6th, 2024. I'm having a lot of emotions. I never what you focus on grows. I am in an era of a lot of change in my life. The biggest, most defining change is noticing the perfectionism that shows up in my life and the ways that it shows up in my life, the insidious ways that it shows up in my life. So, because I had this idea to be someone with a podcast, I may have just even rolled my eyes when I said that, because that's so not someone I have been before. But Alexis Fernandez, Prixa, the author of The Neuroscience of Self-Love, and she also has a successful podcast. She told me a couple of things, not personally, but by listening to her. Prioritizing myself, regardless of external factors, is an important goal. And so I have a lot of external factors that feel like they're getting in my way of taking good care of myself, and I'm trying to break them down one by one. So I have no script here. We'll see what happens. But I had an epiphany. I don't know what you call it. In August of 2024, so a few months ago, where I realized that if I imperfectly meet my basic needs, so I am hydrated, I'm nourished, I'm well rested, I feel safe in the physical structure that I'm sleeping in, that I'm residing in, that I'm housed in, that my stuff is housed in, and I'm able to breathe fresh air and meditate. And meditation, that's always been a big hang up. Someone else that I very much look up to and who has been inspiration for me is Jessamine Stanley of the Underbelly Yoga and other things, but that's how she came into my life. Again, I don't know her, but I subscribe to her. And she said that breathing is just, or meditation is just breathing so you don't end up on the news. And the day she said that, I broke down in tears because let's circle back to the beginning of this. I'm a perfectionist in recovery. And so for me, my journey with meditation, I took a class on it in my master's program. I have a master's in social work, and I had to get it right. I had to do it right. Was that the very beginning? I believe that was the very beginning for me. Maybe a Headspace app before that, perhaps a Headspace app. And then I did a 2-day retreat, and it was magnificent. It was a beautiful feeling. And then there was no daily practice that I followed through on. So the information was like in me somewhere, but I wasn't practicing it, so I lost it. And that's how that goes. That's how that works. And so when Jessamine said, meditation is just breathing so you don't end up on the news, I was like, I can definitely do that. I can definitely see, even right now, there's a certain posture that I think I have to have. There's a certain angle I think I need to have. I've noticed my hair, messy hair, don't care. It's been out there. I'm not worried about it. If you're worried about it, here's where I'm going to show some guts. Thank you, Jordy Kiefer. It does take guts. Oh my God, my phone went off. Also fine. What was I going to say about guts? Messy hair, don't care. And if you care, this isn't the podcast for you. So go find your space on the internet. This is hard. This is weird. um, so back to that time in August, I realized that if I could imperfectly meet my needs, my whole worldview shifted. I felt free. I felt confident. I felt capable. I felt so capable. And a couple things also happened around that time. I was living alone for the first time in my life. There were 3 years in college where I was a resident assistant. But anyone who has done that knows that, yes, my physical space was my own. I was in a long-term relationship with my high school sweetheart at that time, and also being a resident assistant. And then I became a senior resident assistant. So my time plus college, all of that, plus I had a part-time job. I don't think it counts. But again, perfectionist. So I'm over here, I've never lived alone. Let me clarify so that you don't go fact check. Perfectionism is insidious. It's insidious. That is the moral of this story. I'm going to take a bite of this apple now. Okay. I deserve food. I deserve hydration. Prioritize myself regardless of external circumstances. For me, I'm learning that means hydrating, peeing. Can we talk about peeing? So, as a perfectionist in recovery, as someone with so many masks on at every part of the day, just depending on where I'm at and who's around, like constantly. I don't know if you've heard of the term of code switching. That first came into my lexicon. That first came into my lexicon in regards to what Black folks in America have to go through. So you've probably heard it. Like one of my neighbors, I lived across from a Black family, and the mom, she would say, "Hi, how's it going? It's a lovely day, isn't it?" And then I could hear her like turn and talk, because I'm white. Spoiler, I'm white. And so that's how she would talk to me. And then a few minutes later, I would hear like, "Hey girl, how's it going?" Like, and it was just more relaxed, just more like genuine. Whereas to me, it was like code switching. That's the whole point of that. I also do it. We all do it. I'm pretty sure we all do it. It's just I'm not comparing my code switching needs to that of Black women. I wouldn't do that. However, I do have my own versions of it. And so trying not to minimize that is something that Britt Frank in The Science of Stuck, that she taught me. So when I challenge myself to prioritize myself regardless of external factors, a beginning of that was noticing all of these times when I could so easily, look at me, I just burped. I'm a burping woman. If I was at work and there was a deadline, actually, where do I want to start with this? Let's rip the Band-Aid. When I worked for Child Protective Services, remember that whole social worker thing? I'm not a licensed social worker. I did not go licensure route. I am not a therapist. I cannot offer you clinical anything. I always knew that I wanted to be so much more nimble and mobile, and 50 minutes and insurance, well, didn't do it for me. So I took the route of casework. Blah, 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 life. I want to talk about Child Protective Services. So these were very long days, very stressful days, very traumatic days. I got to the point where I would stop hydrating. I could feel it in my body, in my bones. in my muscles, and when I would pee, it would be brown and smelly and just immediately like, girl, you are not doing a great job. And another thing about me, when I was 17 years old, shout out to my neurospicy babes, because you're on a roller coaster with Kayla Freak right now. Okay, my teenage years. Perfectionism was not something that I just woke up one day and was like, I'm going to be a perfectionist. Nope. I was the oldest child in a single parent household, just my mom, who had me she gave birth to me when she was 20 years old. She made the decision to carry on having me at 19, and we'll get into whatever we get into whenever we get into it. But the important part there is the struggle for her was real. And I remember as young as 4 years old taking on responsibility around, I have a very clear image in my head of me getting a stool and pushing it up to the sink and helping her do dishes, and me being just super adorable, and it made her smile and it made her laugh, and the rest is history. I've gone through so much therapy, and trust me, those feelings, those emotions, they come up when they come up. My goal is not to never be sad about sad things that happen. My goal is to feel it and don't identify with it and just let it happen and move by. So, little 4-year-old me, fucking great job, baby. You did the best that you could, and I'm so honored to have you inside of me. In present day, I've got you. You don't have to perform for me. I'll keep you safe. I'll procrastinate the dishes. I just recently moved, and it was a big moment last night because I washed a single Tupperware. I'm a procrastinator. That's another thing that Alexis Fernandez taught me. So perfection is procrastination. You want to aim for consistency over perfection, and you want to be persistent. So there's already been multiple moments where I'm like, why am I talking into a camera right now? What the fuck do I have to offer? I'm a hot ass mess. Oh, that's true. We'll see. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll see. This is my starting point. I'm being persistent. I'm not letting perfectionism, which is self-harm. I'm a perfectionist in recovery. I'm becoming more aware of my self-harm tendencies and the insidious, in case I haven't mentioned that, insidious ways that it shows up. Perfectionism. I was born into a world that looked like a single mom with no lucrative job prospects. She's always been a hustler. She's always done side gigs here, side gigs there. The majority of my life, she had more than one job. There were times when she had 3, and she made it work. I told myself I never wanted to just make it work, and a lot of that formed who I then became. So the default that I became. And so right now, December 6th, 2024, I'm taking another piece of Alexis Fernandez's advice is anything can be me. So if anything can be me, and today's the day that I decide that I'm starting a podcast, today's the day that I'm starting to share my thoughts that I have something to share. Let's see where it goes. But the first draft, perfectionism led the way. So straight A student, never missed a day of school until my senior year, actually. So I remember one day in elementary school, it was time to go to school, and I went to go tell my mom that I wasn't feeling well. And as I'm like getting closer to, I'm like standing in the doorway, I vomit, and we have this conversation about how I should stay home. And little elementary school me was like, no, nothing is more important than my education. If I'm going to be a juvenile court judge, it starts now. I think we're talking second or third grade. So pretty extreme. I'm pretty sure vomiting was a great way to get out of school. Also, this was for sure in third grade. Again, went to go tell my teacher that I needed to go to the bathroom because I wasn't feeling well, and totally vomited again. So my little anxious self has been showing herself via nausea and vomiting for a really long time. Something I'm kind of realizing right now, because when I feel anxious, everything inside just whew. But that's not exactly what I wanted to talk about. I don't know. Like I said, let's keep going. So I've been a hot mess my whole life is the moral of the story. No, I'm a product of my environment. We all are. And so one of the ways that I adapted was perfectionism, was continuing to produce, continuing to show up. In my senior year of high school, I gave myself permission to miss school for the first time, and it was, of all of the frivolous things, to go and see my long distance boyfriend. And that same day, the power went out at the school, and it didn't actually count for a mark against me for my attendance. And I thought that was kind of a cool one. I don't know. And then my mom talked me into ditching on senior ditch day, because she was like, this is getting absurd. Like, you're allowed to have a day off. And that was a fun day. I remember that day. It was a positive day. There's some cute photos from that day. Anywho, 17-year-old me, my very first job, because remember, in second grade, I knew I wanted to be a juvenile court judge. I remember watching Judging Amy and Judge Joe Brown, sometimes Judge Judy, but it didn't really do it for me the same as Judge Joe Brown and Judging Amy, which Judging Amy is fake. Well, it's probably all fake, but it was a drama, like a show. Whereas Judge Joe Brown, if you don't know, was real people, real cases, and real justice, that kind of thing. May have just accidentally mixed it. But again, perfectionism, letting it go. You guys either know who he is or you don't, or you can Google it. So that became my mission, as I was going to be a juvenile court judge, and I was going to change the lives of youth, because I always said it too. I was like, I think that people, when they know better, they can do better, and I want to be kind and compassionate, but also stern, and put them back on the right track. That was it. So when it came time, when I was approaching 15 and a half, I was so ready to work, because my mom was always that one that was like, you can accept whatever it is I'm offering you, or you can go get a job. And 13-year-old, 12-year-old me was like, okay, you can stop using that line. There's nothing I can do, so I guess I'll just accept this. But 15 and a half was approaching. I was ready for that first taste of freedom. And I started applying. Well, I didn't actually make it to applying. I started collecting applications for fast food. And my mom is not perfect. Disclaimer, we've talked about this. And we're working on a healthy place now. But back in the day, things were not perfect. So, yeah, content warning. I have some stories that I know are not things that I would replicate in my life. I know there are things that she would not do again if she had any clue the implications, or if she knew better herself. I come from a long line of moms who were doing their very best, okay? So, look at me. So protective of her, and we've even talked about this. So anyway, I was collecting applications for fast food because that's what 15-and-a-half-year-olds do. My mom was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I was like, "What? I'm trying to do the thing you've been telling me to do for years. I'm trying to get a job. Like, what are you looking at me all crazy for?" She walks away, comes back with a phone book, and chucks it at my head. I don't think it actually hit me. I'm pretty sure I dodged it. There was an incident once with a giant jar of relish that I do think made contact. But anyway, she never actually hit me. But there was so much threat of injury that the emotional scars, they're there. But anyway, so in this particular instance, she threw the phone book at me. I captured the phone book. I'm like, "What the fuck? What is?" And she's like, "Start calling law firms." So I did. 81 law firms later, phone calls, 46 faxed resumes, and I got my first interview. And my first job was, in fact, at a law firm. I'm proud of that. That was a big fucking deal for me. 16 years old, my first job. My first mentor. We're going to talk about daddy issues. Let's throw that in here too. Lots of daddy issues. But having strong, confident male role models. He was also my first Jewish male role model. There's a little trend with those there. But anyway, he believed in me and hired me. And it made the world of difference to me in my belief that I could do things, that I could actually accomplish these huge goals that I had set out for myself. And yeah, it was great. I definitely felt very much mentored. He is someone that I called over the summer, this summer when I told you I was doing really well, and he's someone that I can go and see and visit. And yeah, anyway, he was also the first person who told me about the benefits of not working so hard. So he had a heart attack at young 30s, 34, 35, because he was one of the youngest attorneys to become an attorney in the state of Nevada. And yeah, he worked his ass off all of the time, constantly, and had a heart attack. Tying this together, when I was 17, I was at this job. I get a call. I would answer the phones, and let's say it was Mr. Johnson about the hearing tomorrow. I was like, okay, let me go see if he's available. And so I go to find my boss, and I wanted to say it's Mr. Johnson on line 1 about the hearing tomorrow. And I went, hot dog, and just kind of stood there and had this panic moment where I was like, those were not the words I was trying to say. Asked if I could go home early. Got home, told my mom a little bit about what was happening to me because I was starting to lose vision in one of my eyes. There was this feeling of like a ice pick just digging behind my eyeballs. I was going numb on one side. The words that I was trying to say were not the right words. She suggested a hot shower, so I did not have health insurance at the time. And in the shower, circling back to vomiting, I start vomiting. And that was what did it for her. She was like, okay, we are going to the hospital immediately. That's when I found out that I have a specific type of migraine disorder that mimics a stroke. And at the time, they didn't know much about it at all. I don't even remember the name that they had given it at that time. There has been more research done, and I know a little bit more about it. And I've also been able to notice a little bit about what triggers it in my own life. Spoiler, it's stress. And also certain things that I can eat or not. There's a long list, but the big one is stress. So speeding that up to my time at Child Protective Services, I had 2 additional migraines in my college years, 2 additional migraines in my master's program. And then during my time, so it was like they would happen, but we're talking like one every couple of years. During my 2 years working at Child Protective Services, I had 8 of them. And so I was like, I've been known that this shit is triggered by stress. This job is toxic as fuck. This whole environment is toxic as fuck. So I could keep doing this and die, or I could prioritize myself and living. So hydration, in my CPS days, I would have, I've got it around here somewhere, those water backpacks, like for when you're hiking, and I would fill it up, and I would do my best to hydrate, and I would be like so on top of it. Like it would feel really good, like when I was finally starting to get back into truly hydrating. And then this new sneaky little self-harm came up where I wouldn't go pee when I needed to pee. Somehow the job or the conversation was more important than my needing to empty my bladder. I'm having a real life human need here, and I'm denying it. For what? For what? For a job? That's nuts. For my own well-being to just be put on the back burner. So I did ultimately leave, and it was hard because they paid very well, and I had to prioritize my own well-being. And at that particular time in my life, I was married to that high school sweetheart I mentioned, and he made $100,000 a year, and then I was bringing in close to, if not at, 70,000. And yeah, we owned the house that we lived in. It was all, I don't know. It was all fine. I don't know. I'm in such a different place about those accomplishments now that it didn't even quite feel right to, there's nothing to brag about in that. And there was once a time in my life where I would have been like, how's this cool? Look what I did. Anywho, my decision to start prioritizing myself, I mean, it's been a lifelong journey, but some of those really big moments were definitely with leaving CPS, because that was hard. That was a very, very difficult decision. Because as social workers, even if you're not one, you've probably heard, there's not exactly a ton of opportunity for financial stability. When you end up working at nonprofits, for example, you're not rolling in the deep. And I even heard a statistic once that a good percentage of nonprofit workers end up needing public services themselves. So it's a self-fulfilling rat race bullshit situation going on there. But because I was married, and also another little bit about me, during the COVID shutdowns, I learned some stuff about myself. And at that time I was working for a different nonprofit. I was working at home. So actually when all of the shutdowns happened, not a ton actually changed in my life, which, talk about a privilege. But I was living with my husband at the time and another couple. And we just had a lot of fun, and we made the best of it, just kind of hunkered down, all 4 of us. This makes me uncomfortable and nervous to talk about, but remember that whole me being a hot mess thing? An emotional affair between me and the other dude blossomed. And from there, the bass-ackward conversation of who to talk to about what got very blurry. And so the conversation between me and the other dude were much more frequent than the conversations with each of us and our own partners. And so the 2 of us had created this fantasy that it was going to work out for all 4 of us to remain in a non-monogamous dynamic. And so at that point in my life, I hadn't even heard the term polyamory. I had no clue what that even was. I'll just spoil it on this one for you. I have lots of evidence to back up that I did it wrong. I did not follow the rules. There are lots of really good pieces of advice on how to get into polyamory, and just about every single one of them I just did not crush it. Okay. And people got hurt, and that is something that up until very recently, the last couple of months, I held a lot of shame and guilt, and there's still some, don't get me wrong. I never wanted to hurt anybody, but I totally 100% see and own and take accountability for how my actions involved in that process did very much hurt people. And so present day, that other couple, they are living their best happy lives monogamously, and I am I am solo polyam and not interested in any sort of being locked down whatsoever by another human being. My life is mine. Yeah, there's that. Okay, I got off on this tangent. The whole thing was a tangent. I don't know. I just started talking. But speaking of needing to pee, I need to pee, and my bodily functions are important. So I'm going to honor that by ending here and saying thanks for listening. And we will talk whenever we talk again.